Good evening. Amar was just telling me how impressed he was with how punctual Presbyterians appear to be. And I assured him that most Sunday mornings I sit down in the chancel at about 9:55 and think nobody's coming to church. And then between 9:57 and 10:04, you all come in, and eventually those pews fill. So let me begin simply by saying thank you, thank you, thank you. We do not take for granted the gift of your time this evening. It is a limited and precious resource, and so we are grateful that you've chosen to invest some time this evening in what I hope will be a vitally important conversation, and by the time you leave this evening, a hopeful opportunity that we're asking the Second Pres congregation as well as community members to participate in. This year at Second Church, as you will see on the screens, we will be engaged in the work of rebuilding. So I've spent a lot of time this summer immersed in scripture and other readings about rebuilding. The more I explore scripture, the better understanding I have of this call, and the more convinced I am that the task of rebuilding is the call for our time. And the more persuaded I am that rebuilding begins with vision. John Calvin compared faith to a new pair of spectacles. That's right, Craig, right? Yes, good. Through the lens of faith, we see the world differently. When we choose to see the world in a faithful way, we see our neighbors differently. In one of his most memorable parables, Jesus divides humanity between those who have responded to the needs of their neighbors. They are blessed. They are the sheep. And those who have not. They are cursed. Jesus puts himself in the place of those neighbors. I was hungry. I was thirsty. I was naked. I was a stranger. I was in prison. What is most interesting to me about the parable is that both groups, the blessed and the cursed, those who responded and those who did not, ask the same question. When did we see you? And his answer is the same. Whenever you saw your neighbor in need, you were looking straight at me. Marilyn Robinson describes the incarnation as the faith that God himself could pass unnoticed in this world. An ordinary man, physically marred by poverty and labor. And then Robinson reverses the question in the parable. Who might he not be? He told us who he was, the hungry, the sick, the imprisoned, the stranger. The parable that is our faith would tell us that the Spirit is always waiting to be seen. When did we see you? They all ask it. The blessed and the cursed, the sheep and the goats, they all ask, when did we see you? And so tonight I want us to pray for courage. And I want us to ask for humility and grace to open our eyes in new ways. Because I firmly believe that our spiritual health, our congregational health, our souls depend on how we answer the question, when did we see you? So here we sit on Meridian Street between Williams Creek and Crooked Creek, called to be repairers of the breach that exists between them. It starts with seeing. If we choose to look, here's what I trust we will see. We will see that our fulfillment is entirely bound up in the flourishing of our neighbors. We will find that all of us are harmed when any of us suffers. That our deepest purpose can only be discovered when we invest our lives in ways that matter. We will discover the truth of Jesus' words that those who give their lives away will find a more lasting joy than those whose small lives of self-interest and preservation dominate. We will learn that proximity renders contempt indefensible, and we will see the presence of God in the presence of each other. My prayer is that this essential work will begin tonight when we choose to see. So I thank you for being here. And with that, I would like to invite the two folks who are leading us in this effort so ably, so wisely, and with such an incredible combination of gifts that you're going to see this evening, Patrice Duckett-Brown and Amar Patel, to come and present.
Hello, everyone. My name is Patrice Duckett-Brown. I am a native of Indianapolis, born and raised on the west side of Indianapolis, off of like 25th and Martin Luther King. I am an IPS product. Grew up at School 42, Crispus Attucks, graduated from Northwest High School. I actually have a bachelor's degree from Martin University, and I have a master's degree from IU, School of Philanthropy. So I am homegrown, embedded into the community. Very proud of it. I have 4 children, an 18-year-old that just went off to college. Yes. Still reeling. 10-year-old daughter, a 3-year-old son, and a 4-month-old. I'm finished. So I definitely am very busy, but I love what I do. I talk about it all the time that I love to live in my passion, and I feel like what I do every day as executive director at the Paper Car Glick is my passion. I grew up with a grandmother who took very good care of me. She was a child care provider, home child care provider, so it wasn't a day that I wasn't up at 6 a.m. in the morning, 5 a.m., help changing diapers and feeding babies. I also worked with a lot of my family members who were entrepreneurs that started small businesses within the area. So I do know how to plow, I do know how to use a backhoe, a bobcat, and all kind of things, right? Definitely. So I am very vast in that, and you'll see that a lot of the work that we do at the Faber Car Glick is very intentional. It is all around families and how families function in our community, taking some of that from where I came from, but also some of the things that I've seen with the community work that I've done over the years. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Amar Patel. I'm really humbled and pleased to be with you tonight. And to see all these tables filled, so much so that we sort of have the pews in the back, it looks like, almost filled as well. So again, my name's Amar Patel, born and raised in Terre Haute, Indiana, proudly so, Anne. I'm a child of immigrants, so my family immigrated to the United States in the 70s. My father is a child of sugarcane farmers, small plot, sort of subsistence farming in a village outside of a city that was once small, is now a city of 7 million, and it's probably one most of us have never heard of in India. My mother is a child of educators and social activists. So my great-grandfather and grandmother were foot soldiers in the freedom struggle from Great Britain, and upon winning independence, opened up a community center because they realized how important education, faith, community, and places for members of the community to come together and build together and make choices together was going to be. And so it's that sort of heritage that I think led me to be a curious young person in Terre Haute, and then ultimately go off to college. And when I graduated from college, my first job was as a teacher in the Chicago Public Schools. The high school science, chemistry and biology, coached baseball. It was the best job, bar none, I'm certain. The hardest job also that I will have ever done. And for the past 7 years, moved back home to Indiana and led the organization that recruited me into the field of education, and that's Teach for America. And so something I couldn't shake in more recent years since my wife and I had our first son, Pax, and our daughter, Veda. Pax is now a first grader. Veda is in pre-K. She'll be 5 this November. Something I couldn't shake is just blocks away from here where we live, 79th and Hoover, blocks away from this institution, occupying the same zip code as this institution. 3 blocks in this direction, 3 blocks in the other direction is a community that noticeably, visibly seems to be not as well endowed. And when I would drop my son off at Spring Mill Elementary, there were visible signs of kids coming from all different parts of the broader community. And I thought long and hard, my wife and I, also an educator, thought, boy, of course we will do anything and everything for our son to have what he needs to thrive, to fulfill his potential. But he has a whole lot teed up for him. 2 college-educated parents, 2 cars, a home we own, parents that were both educators. And know what it looks like to teach a child to read to learn. And I wasn't certain that all of the children within Spring Mill Elementary School were gifted with the same privileges that my son and so many like him were. And so it gnawed at me, how can we contribute? I've spent my life as an educator and running an education nonprofit. I know a little bit about the education space, but I thought to address some of the issues and the inequities and predictable inequalities, there are a broader set of forces at play, and I wanted to contribute to that here in my community. Thankfully, there were a couple congregants here this evening that shared this view and wanted to work on, learn about an effort through proximity together and contribute. And that's Mr. David Shane, longtime congregant, it's my understanding, here at Second Presbyterian, and Jim McClelland, longtime congregant here as well, partnered with us alongside Mike Smith, who is a long-term congregant at St. Luke's United Methodist Church. And through this process, I've gotten to know Patrice, who I believe, bar none, is the most effective social service, human services organizational leader in the city of Indianapolis. We're blessed that she's running the one institution on the north, and I believe on the northwest, I believe on the north side of Indianapolis, that is a human service organization. We're blessed that this institution is just a handful of blocks away from here. We're going to learn more about it tonight. So, we wanted to start, and our friend here, Jim, who has a mic, and will be speaking a bit later this evening as well, I've asked Jim to just read the quote out loud, and we're not going to do anything else, but just read the quote, think about it, and then we're going to move on, give you all a chance to get to know folks at your table.
The end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. The type of love that I stress here is not eros, a sort of aesthetic or romantic love, not philia, a sort of reciprocal love between personal friends, but it is agape, which is understanding goodwill for all men. It is an overflowing love which seeks nothing in return. It is the love of God working in the lives of men. This is the love that may well be the salvation of our civilization. It's Martin Luther King, Jr.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, Patrice and I had the indulgence, perhaps, of introducing ourselves. We want to give you a chance to very quickly introduce yourselves to your table mates. And we're going to try to do this very quickly. I was warned that this might turn into the rest of the evening. So in 30 seconds, extra credit from the former teacher goes to those that can do it in 20 seconds. In 30 seconds or less, at your table, just share your name. You might know the people at your table, you might not, right? So share your name. And also, share something important about you and your story that the people at your table and most of the people in this room do not know about you. I'm going to give you 60 seconds of teacher time to think about what you might want to share.
That's quick teacher
Okay?
time.
The point here is not to share what might be on your LinkedIn profile if you have one. Okay? The point is to share something important about you and your story that people here do not know. 60 seconds, and as the spirit moves, go ahead and start sharing. If you can hear me, raise your hand. All right, you can tell I taught. I was a mediocre teacher, admittedly, but there are some things I learned like that. Okay, it's kind of amazing, right, when we just have space and ask a simple question about each other, or ask a simple question about another, what we learn. You might have learned some things about someone you've known for quite some time that you've never heard before. You might be more deeply connected to the person or people sitting next to you than you thought you possibly could be when just introducing yourself or having them introduce you. Okay, so we have a lot of experts in the room. I heard there's some long-time Washington Township residents, long-time Central Indiana residents and leaders. And so we want to generate some of the perspective that's already in the room about some of the content that we're going to cover in the discussion today. And so I just have this simple question. What do you know about poverty and opportunity in Washington Township? What things come to mind? I'd like to hear 2 or 3 comments. You can just raise your hand. Yeah?
We have a very busy food pantry, so there's a lot of need.
Very busy food pantry. It seems to be a lot of need. Yeah, thank you. Yes?
There is a challenge in the social service community of getting funding for Washington Township because people that don't live here often think we are not as much in need as Center Township. So therefore, they put all the resources in Center Township.
Sure. So in the broader narrative, there might be this narrative in the broader kind of zeitgeist that Washington Township is not a community that's in need in the same way that perhaps other communities are. Yeah, right here.
I know when my kids were in school, the number of people in poverty in the schools was so large that most of the grade schools had free and reduced lunch for everyone.
Yeah, so most of the grade schools had poverty levels that were high enough to make it so that most of the schools had high free and reduced price lunch percentages. Okay, thank you. We know a lot, right? We know a lot. What we're going to do in tonight's discussion is try to illuminate, and this is part of my charge, and then you're going to hear from the real star this evening, and that's Patrice. I'm going to share a bit about some of the data story in both quantitative ways. Patrice is going to share some of the data story in human ways. We're going to talk about what we've learned about the types of interventions that support helping neighbors be mobile and sustainably mobile out of poverty. And Patrice is going to overview a program that she is launching with support to address these issues systematically over time, thinking big, but starting small. Okay, so a little bit of the data. As was shared, we have a little bit of a distance between the general narrative about the extent of poverty or near poverty in Washington Township and the reality in the broader sort of zeitgeist in Indianapolis and broader Indiana in some circles. Poverty and opportunity gaps in Washington Township today look much like, or in some ways like, those in Center Township, on the east side, on the west side, etc. For instance, if we look at Crooked Creek, the Crooked Creek neighborhood, as Chris mentioned earlier, in a census tract within Crooked Creek, just to orient you, think west of Harcourt Road, Ditch or Harcourt Road, east of Town Line Road, south of 79th Street, and north of 62nd Street. We're going to sort of cut into the data as it's shown in this neighborhood. How are residents in this neighborhood doing? First, from an income standpoint, residents in this neighborhood per capita have income at 1/2 that of Indianapolis as a whole, $16,000 a year per capita. 1/3 that of Washington Township as a whole, and 1/6 that of Meridian Hills and Williams Creek, where we are today. Poverty rate is 41%. The child poverty rate is 61%. From a housing standpoint, 71% of residents are renting in this census tract, in this neighborhood. 48% of residents are spending more than 30% of their take-home pay, their income, on housing. The title, sort of the term for that is housing cost burdened. Almost half of residents are housing cost burdened. Interestingly, oftentimes we might hear when confronting data like this nationally, statewide, regionally, in the city, there's a narrative that goes something like this. Yeah, it's terrible, and adults in those neighborhoods need to get a job. That might be familiar, right? Well, the facts are that neighbors in the neighborhood have jobs, so much so that they're significantly more likely to be working, participating in the labor force, to the tune of 75% versus 72% in Marion County as a whole. Residents in poverty, which remind you is north of 40% of residents. Residents in poverty are almost 2/3 as a percentage likely to be working or seeking employment versus 41% in Marion County as a whole. And all residents, 72% are working or seeking employment versus 67% in Marion County as a whole. The key points are this. First, employment and labor force participation rates are materially higher in this neighborhood, in Washington Township, than in the city as a whole. Neighbors living in poverty are significantly more likely to be employed and seeking employment, and eviction rates are alarmingly high. So, let's dive further and not look at poverty or not poverty, and look at the so-called ALICE population. These are residents that are living above the poverty level, but well below what it takes to thrive as an individual and as a family. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. This could be a relative, it could be a friend, it could be someone in this room tonight. They're cashiers, waiters and waitresses, childcare providers, etc. These struggling households are forced, given economic circumstances, to make really tough choices every single day. While this hardship is pervasive across central Indiana, Indiana as a whole, and Washington Township, households of color are disproportionately likely to be so-called ALICE, or within the ALICE population. So let's look at ALICE data in Washington Township. So in Washington Township, we have north of 60,000 total households. Of the 60,000, 23,000 are below the ALICE threshold, so are either at the ALICE level or in poverty. Of that, almost 17,000 are ALICE. That is 28% of the Washington Township population would be categorized as such. 11%, or 6,700 households in Washington Township are at or below the poverty level. So now let's look at Crooked Creek. Let's look at the 46260 zip code specifically. There are a total of 14,641 households in 46260. Of that, 6,300, in excess of 6,300, are ALICE. That's 44% of the neighborhood of households. 4,200, almost 4,300, are below ALICE and above federal poverty, so that's the ALICE population, and 2,100 are below the federal poverty level. The point is this. If we add on top the ALICE population, we have a stunningly high rate of neighbors and families that are struggling from an income and economic standpoint. So it's one thing to look at the numbers. It's another to understand the human stories associated with these numbers. Patrice.
So one of the things we talk about in our community center is we try to uplift the facts, right? Numbers do not lie, we know that, right? Data doesn't lie, but it never tells the entire story. So there's three stories or three sides to a story: the truth, their truth, and what really happened. And so we think about that when we look at how do we service clients in our community. So Washington Township is considered one of the highest income-based communities here, but there is a large number of pocket poverty in this community. When we look at the vast income levels in this community and they look at the data, they see that, yes, we are at the upper levels of income because we have millionaires, we have billionaires, we have doctors, we have sports individuals here, athletes here. We also have working class individuals here. And so we have to keep driving over and over again to the funders, to the individuals that are willing to help, what it really means to have a working class individual in this community. And what that looks like in Alice is that we possibly have a 2-family household, 2 or more children, maybe even a grandparent, because we do have a lot of intergenerational living here in this area. One person is the breadwinner of that household. That individual can be making around $18 to $20 an hour as of today. Pre-COVID, it was $15 to $16. Does anyone know what a workable, livable wage is today in Indiana or Marion County? You know what that dollar amount will be? 24? It's $22.15. $22.15 as of today. But it's always been about $22.15 4 years ago when we were at $12 and $13. Then we had the great push to get everyone to $15. COVID hit, and then we had the great push to get everyone to $18, which is a work or a livable wage, but not workable. You can barely make ends meet. So that individual head of household is making about that amount, $18 to $20 an hour. So that means that they can possibly take care of that household as long as nothing goes wrong at all. And I mean nothing. There's no tire blowouts. There's no sick children. There's no extra medicine from the parent that they're taking care of. The food is available. They maybe are able to collect a lot of coupons, but they're able to make ends meet as long as everything goes perfectly for that entire month. Now, they may have an additional income from the second parent. They might. But in most Alice families in this area, that second parent doesn't have a steady job. They are working. They are providing income when it can, but it is not income that can provide benefits or long-term income. So they may have their ups and downs of extra money in the household, but guess where that goes to? Taking care of the household. In our food pantries, all over Marion County or in the northwest side of Indianapolis, we see it even more in this area, where individuals are making those hard judgments around, am I going to put gas in my car or purchase my household supplies? They may be able to take care of food, but am I going to put gas in my car, or am I going to purchase soap, detergent, dishwashing liquid for my household? I might put the side of cleaning my house today, this month, because I need gas, because gas is spiked up to $4 an hour, or even $4 a gallon. So they have to make these judgments every month to make sure that they balance. So Alice is making it, they're sustaining, and then what we would call surviving. But they are not thriving, because the moment something happens in their household can lead them right into a path of poverty.
So, you might be wondering, boy, this is data I knew or had an intuition around. Or, oh dear, this is shocking, jarring, unsettling, morally reprehensible perhaps. The good news is this: there are known strategies and interventions to support neighbors, Alice families in particular, to achieve mobility from poverty. So we've been studying some of these. There's a lot of words on this slide and a lot of names and all that, so we're not going to go through all that. Suffice it to say, we've sort of been doing a national and local sort of review of any number of efforts that to inform what are the interventions that are most effective and proven and evidence-based to support neighbors that are struggling to sustainably escape poverty for the rest of their lives. There are a couple key points and key lessons that we've learned through this review, through the wisdom of 10,000 hours of leadership and experience. First, while meeting basic needs is essential, support that empowers and builds capability is far more effective to achieve mobility from poverty in a sustainable fashion. The second lesson is this: relationships matter immensely. I'm going to turn it over to our friend, Mr. Jim McClelland, to speak to this point. Jim.
Thanks, Amar. I spent several decades with Goodwill Industries in central Indiana. And everybody knows Goodwill has stores, but a lot of people aren't aware that since the early years of this century, Goodwill has become heavily involved in efforts to reduce intergenerational poverty. One of the first major steps that we took was to open a high school for a high poverty, high special needs population of students. And what we learned from that school led to the creation of high schools for adults who had previously dropped out. And as we continued to learn, we started operating a nurse home visitation program for first-time moms in low-income households. And we also launched a program to help people who were exiting the correction system successfully reenter society. Now, in every one of those initiatives, and all of them continue today, by the way, in every one of them, one of the keys to lasting impact was the sustained presence over time of strong, positive relationships with the people we were trying to help. For example, to minimize recidivism, we saw that it's vital for people coming out of prisons to have a strong support system, people who will be their friends, who will encourage them, who will open doors for them, who will help them through the rough spots, and in some cases just provide hope. And in my work with the state on the opioid crisis after I retired from Goodwill, we saw that same kind of support is incredibly important for people in recovery if they're going to stay in recovery. Now, as you're going to hear in a few minutes, the F.A.S.T program is designed around both full-time paid staff and committed volunteers. And strong, sustained relationships are a key to achieving the results that everyone involved in this is striving for. But I'll also tell you that the benefits are not just to the families that we're assisting. The volunteers who work with the families will also benefit. I was fortunate in my career to have many opportunities to get to know and work with people at just about every level of society, in cities, small towns, and rural areas. And that contact over a long period of time convinced me that for those of us who are relatively well off, getting to really know people with backgrounds and in circumstances vastly different from our own can help us not only have a much better awareness of the real issues, but also be in a better position to help develop, implement, and support solutions that work. In his book, The Second Mountain, The Quest for a Moral Life, David Brooks writes, "The social fabric is not woven by leaders from above. It is woven at every level through a million caring actions from one person to another. It is woven by people fulfilling their roles as good friends, neighbors, and citizens." If you find that you're in a position to become involved in this program, I will tell you that you may well be able to help some of our neighbors improve their lives. But in the process, you will also find, I'm willing to bet on this, that your own life will be enriched. Amar?
Thanks, Jim. Jim and I are both enamored with a researcher, an economist at Harvard University, runs an institution there called Opportunity Insights. His name's Raj Chetty. And he has access, don't be scared, to all of our tax data. It's de-identified from, I think, like 1950 and everyone ever since, and all kinds of data, demographic data, social data, and so on and so forth, is able to put it together, do regression analyses and everything to answer the question, what are the predictive features of neighborhoods and lives that are likely to be economically mobile, from those that are born into poverty at birth, by the age of 35, living middle class, upper middle class lives. What constitutes that journey? What supports or predicts that journey? The most recent study so he's been disseminating new research every couple of years. The most recent study came out last fall that found the most predictive feature in American citizens and Americans of all kinds that travel that journey. The most predictive feature is the extent to which they have relationships with those across class lines, what the researchers call so-called economic connectedness. This is a key feature of what we intend, a key condition we intend to put in place within the FAST program. So a starting bet with this effort, we've talked about the problem and opportunity in our midst, not way far away, not miles downtown or closer to downtown, but in our midst. We've talked about what we've learned can help support and address at root some of these issues sustainably over time. And so we start with a bet. And the bet is this: if we successfully work with, come alongside, empower families to sustainably escape poverty by first humbly designing with our neighbors, not to, not for, with, cultivating our and their personal capabilities to realize their goals and our own, valuing people and relationships and stories above all else and in all directions, and leveraging and coordinating resources we actually have here within Washington Township by and large, human, financial, institutional, that already exist or can be accessed here, then we can create an actionable model, perhaps, that can be more broadly applied to eliminate poverty in Washington Township and perhaps beyond. So this is the bet. Patrice?
All right. So this is the exciting part. So we talk about in our community, and we do a lot of work around how do we service our clients in our area. And we do service everyone. Anyone that walks through our doors, we provide them with services. We know that our individuals are at the lower end of our poverty level. We can provide them quick, fast programming for instant support. But more than ever, we really need to look at our families that are just needing a little extra support and a little extra step and some extra arms, some hugs, some pushes, some cheers. We need to make sure that we're looking at those families. And so what we wanted to do was really focus on our families that are not receiving those subsidies right away. And we wanted to make sure that we accelerate them a little faster so that they can be more sustaining. And so we created a program called the F.A.S.T program. The F.A.S.T program will work with individuals that are right above the cuff, two-family households. We do not care if the second parent is on any of the documentation. Because again, keep in mind that these individuals do not receive subsidies if they really, truly told everyone who was all in that household. So most times, the female head of household does not tell government or subsidies that they have a male counterpart in the room, in the house, so that they can receive subsidies such as child care. We're talking about child care for a 2-year-old that is $289 a week for the month, right? $289. An infant at this point today is $439. In some cases, $1,600 a month. That's about the same amount of money they're paying for rent. So they can't afford to take care of $1,600 a month in their household. So they'll say, I'm the only one in the household. I'm the only one doing it. I need the subsidy. So they take the subsidy. They're trying to get themselves together. They're still barely making it. Anything else happens, they're going back down into a path of poverty. So what we wanted to do was really look at these families and say, hey, let's take our time. Let's look at you and your significant other. Let's work to help build you together and get you a foundation and get you to a place that you do not have to think about not having the other spouse or the other significant other there. So we started piecing this together bit by bit to make sure that that works. And how do we have that information, or how do we know what we're doing? First, we went back to our resources that we have and what we do at our community center. And then we started bringing out pieces that typically this group does not utilize. So we have our early child care center, which is our dual language. It is for 2 to 5 year olds today, September 15th. It'll be infants to 5-year-olds. Thank you. We do teach Spanish as a second language to our children. It's fully emergent, so they're learning Spanish throughout the day. We have a Spanish speaker, a native Spanish speaker in the classroom, along with the English speaker in the classroom, to be very intentional. We have our youth center program, which is from 5 years of age, which are kindergartners, up to 17. Our 5 to 12-year-olds receive enrichment programming and summer programming, make sure they all learn how to swim. Our 12 to 15-year-old, as of right now, called our Future Leaders in Progress, they are actually on a pen pal program with individuals in Ghana, and they're working on a podcast this year, communicating back and forth through Zoom. Next year, we'll take 20 individuals, 12 to 15, over to Ghana for a week. Yes. We also have our employment flip. They are 15 to 17-year-olds. They work with us all year round. During the summer, it's full-time. During the fall and spring, it's part-time. In the summer, they work in our food pantry, and they also work in our raised beds, helping us provide vegetables and fruit for our food pantry. In the fall and spring, they are tutored, and they are also mentored. So they figure out what their career track is, and then we match them up in our building with one of our professionals there so they can get that experience all year round. For instance, we have a young lady who is interested in marketing. She works with our marketing department, so she does a lot of our social media work. As you can see how vast our social media is right now. We have our Family Success Center, which is our internal social service support that provides all the wraparound services that is needed for immediate need. That includes basic needs. It also includes home ownership program, financial literacy, workforce development. We have an individual that helps with workforce, and also building partnerships with Park 100 to bring the jobs to the community. We do not accept any partners in our community unless they're paying at least $17 an hour. If they're paying less than that, we can help get them in other places, but we will not accept them as a partner for us. We also have educational attainment. Here at the center, we provide free, or not free, but free to the clients, but we pay for the tuition for individuals to receive certifications in like pharmacy tech, to also receive certifications in HVAC, construction, and warehouse, forklift, and other vast trainings that they may come to us about. We have our Family and Community Engagement Center, which is our mobile social service network. Now, this is a little different. It's one of our innovative pieces. This is where we take our community center, pick it up, and take it to a neighbor community or apartment complex, and we set up our community center as if it was us at our Faber Glick Center at 2990 West 71st Street. We provide them with social service, case managers, and additional support right there in their community. Coming from a community background, I've been a community organizer for over 15 years. I believe that any place is your community if that's where you live. And so we want to make sure that every place that you live, where it be an apartment complex or not, has a community center. And so by doing that, we are eliminating one of those major barriers that we have no control over in our area on the northwest side, and that's transportation. I don't know if you know, but we have 3 buses that run through the northwest side of Indianapolis. And for anyone to get from Michigan Road to Georgetown Road to go to Kroger's, it takes 2 hours on the bus, right? So we can't afford to wait on them to get to us. So we start going to them. And in addition to having that option in that program in that department, we also had to make sure we were reaching out to all of our community, which is one, having our Project Determine, which is specific programming for our males within the area. We have our LACE program, which is Mr. Masinghe is one of our case managers to help with our immigrant population with citizenship, visas, green cards, and any type of immigrant support that we need. Mr. Masinge speaks 7 different dialects and African dialects. We also have 2 Spanish speakers as well. We have parent engagement, as always, and then our Recycle Teenagers, which is our senior program. I say it all the time, they totally act like teenagers, so temperamental, dating, and all of that. We also have our food pantry. We really focus on healthy eating and living, so we do cooking classes for our families. And then right now, one of the biggest things is we do a lot around mental health. We provide free mental health services for any individual that walks in the door. We have a therapist on site so that he is able to come in and help de-escalate any concern. He actually has an office, so if anyone is in need, you can send them over and he's able to see them within any day. And they can receive 10 free services through us without any wait or hesitation. So with those programs and the additional partnerships, our goal is to be able to walk alongside of the family. I keep going back to walking alongside of the family because this is what makes the difference of our F.A.S.T program. Walking alongside of them with a large cheering squad. They can get it. They can make it. They just have a couple of bumps that they've been able to hit along the way. So why not walk alongside of them to keep them on the path of where they were trying to go? They're working really hard. They're moving really hard. Sometimes those bumps just slow them down. Our goal is to walk alongside of them. As we do that, one of the major things that we want to accomplish is, one, making sure that they are working and within that 150 to 175 poverty level. That level means that they can really sustain their home. Again, they're working and getting there. And we want to move them to 400%. 400% poverty means $25 an hour per household leader. That's 2-family household or 2-parent household. Both the individuals are making $25 an hour. That will at least get them to a point that they can thrive. $25 an hour, 2 people in a household, thrive. Now, they won't have the best savings, but they can at least start a savings. All right? The other pieces that we will do, again, walking alongside of them, is making sure that we have a coach or a navigator that is not afraid to walk up and knock on someone's door, that is there to talk to them every step of the way. We understand that as we move them through this new way of thinking, the mentality has to change as well. We're not talking about individuals that are having a hard time with major things, our basic or our emergency need families. We're talking about individuals that have those major small hiccups, those self-saboteur type of activities. Maybe feeling like you can't accomplish school or finish school because you have 2 toddlers at home and you can't go to work and go to school and take care of the 2 toddlers. Or having a degree in science but really wanting to go work in education and you can't find a job because you only have a science degree and they don't want to hire you. We're talking about these type of things that they need coaching on. How do we connect you to the right places to make sure that you can still stay employed, get into your passion, and also be able to thrive? So that is what we'll do at the F.A. Can I go back?
Nope.
Thank you. Then we'll have the volunteers, again, being around, making sure you can build those connections so we can do what we can inside the center. Our volunteers and our cheering squad will do what they can inside the household. So going to them, networking with them, inviting them out to church, inviting them out to programs so that they can see other access and opportunities that may come about. All right? So the way that we see it is that the inside of F.A., we're the coach, we're the navigators, we're really listening to every family, trying to understand what they need, trying to eliminate the barrier, not address it, eliminate it. So getting it out the way. What we need are the cheerleaders and the friends. Because as we eliminate those barriers, new things come about. As we eliminate those barriers, the mind starts changing. As we eliminate those barriers, sometimes doubt plays a part, in that work. And so what we need are the cheerleaders that provides the faith, that provides the strength, that provides the extra encouragement to say, you can do it. This is okay. I've been through it. I've seen it. I know someone who has, and it's okay. It may seem scary today, but I promise you tomorrow it's going to be all right. The cheerleader that helped them through each of their cycles as they go through this fast track. So I just want to talk about, again, a potential FAST family. That potential FAST family is one that we are currently working with. They are a two-parent household. One parent is working right now, $18 an hour. The other parent is working underneath the table because they do not have documentation as of yet. All the children are participating in FAE programming, very active. One is in preschool, the other are in our FAE program. The parents are very, very engaged. They have participated in our credit counseling. They participated in our pharmacy technician training, so she received a certification. They participated in the parent engagement activities with WFYI and others that have came to the center just to try to help educate and improve their family household. They are renting an apartment. They've been in the same apartment for 2 years, but the rent has increased 3 times. Their rent is $1,600 a month, right? $1,600 for a 2-bedroom home. And one of the parents is on a work visa. So he's kind of limited on where he goes. This is a perfect family for us. We will work with that family, and we will make sure, one, that we move them both up to $25 an hour. One is making sure that we can get her into her career that she wishes to. The other piece is utilizing our LACE program and getting the husband his citizenship. Making sure that the children are receiving home tutoring activities. All 3 will need that extra support. So instead of having them go to a tutor, the volunteers and the cheering squad goes to their home and help them tutor so that their education and their academics are excelling. The parents will move towards savings, so we will work with them with our financial coach and go through their budgeting as they're getting up to $25 an hour, teaching them how to save early. Not once the money starts rolling in, because then they're rolling and they're not thinking about it, but before it gets there so that when they do start seeing that difference, they can start having a small savings. And then also helping them moving to home ownership or potential entrepreneurship so that they can start sustaining and thriving. And then in the end, making sure that the entire family has a support system, that they do not just have to rely on each other. So how do we connect them to the community?
So we have a growing group of prospective FAST partner organizations. There hasn't been a faith leader or an institution that's been as deeply committed and passionate for the sort of the moral imperative, I believe, as well as sort of the community responsibility as Mr. Chris Henry and Lisa Enright. And we're very, very grateful to them for hosting us this evening and for the months of conversation and counsel and helping shape this effort. There's a growing group of congregations, of institutions of all kinds that are partnering given their distinctive capabilities as part of the effort. And we believe it's turning into a broader community effort. We're thinking big, we're starting small. 15 families, and if we see success, Patrice and team and all of us see success with 15 families, we think we might be able to serve many, many more here in our community of Washington Township and potentially beyond over time. You might be thinking, this was interesting. I have a ton of questions. We're going to hold some time for questions and discussion here in just a moment. You also might be thinking, how might I get engaged? I'm compelled. I want to learn more. How might I get engaged? 3 thoughts for you. 2 in particular that I'm going to highlight here. Chris, I think, is going to reinforce this point as we close. First, become a FAST volunteer. You heard from Patrice, you heard from Jim, you heard from me how important relationships are. Relationships with staff, professional staff on Patrice's team, as well as a broader array of relationships with community members here. That in place is the the research would show drives the most predictive likelihood of a family being intergenerationally mobile, in particular the children and their families. So become a volunteer. You could be a family volunteer where you are getting into a relationship with the caregivers, the adults in the household, supporting, encouraging, sharing with them things that you're working on, as I'm working on as a husband, as a father, as a leader, and they doing so with us, and we support each other through that process over the next 2 years and potentially beyond for a lifetime. Becoming a volunteer tutor. I think it was Debbie mentioned earlier, this is something she's particularly passionate about. Tutoring kids in FAST families. We have a partner that is coming online that has this expertise, curriculum, resources, professional staff that would be alongside you on site as the tutoring is happening. Would help set goals for kids so it's not tutoring towards no end, but tutoring towards academic proficiency, tutoring towards career aspirations, tutoring towards post-secondary pursuits. Second, become a FAST collaborator. You might be thinking, boy, I'm not sure being a volunteer is necessary for me, but I do want to have a relationship, and I feel like I have gifts, resources, networks that might be brought to bear to help support this effort and support FAST families. Consider becoming a FAST, so-called FAST collaborator. And then finally, consider supporting the effort with funding. I want to underscore the first two, however. So as a next step, Lisa Enright is the person to consider talking to. Patrice and I will be here as well at the end if you have an interest in getting engaged specifically in this effort. We'll come back to that in just a moment. I do have a slide here that just says discussion. To be eager to hear what questions are coming up for you. What reflections do you have?
We could ask folks to wait until they get the microphone.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Lisa has a microphone here. I think there's a question there in the back I saw.
Question about individual families' transportation needs. I think we live over near you, and I see the biggest problem is people not being able to get a bus or get a car to get where they need to go.
And in most of our services, when we talk about our overall services, we do have transportation as a barrier for our families. So they are struggling. We have opportunities for Lyft and Uber that we have grants for that we can help provide to kind of speed up that transportation model, but it is very costly and expensive. And we see that in the need when they come in for paying their rent or paying utilities, is that they spent a lot of money on Ubering just as much as they spent on door dashing. And so it's becoming a very financial strain for our community as a whole on the northwest side of Indianapolis. Now, our FAST families do not have transportation barriers unless the car breaks down. These are families that typically have transportation or getting back and forth to work.
I think there's a question right here.
If you become a FAST family volunteer, are you assigned in a way that you are the only volunteer working with that family, or are there multiple volunteers working with that family? How does that work, and in terms of kind of just the mechanics of it and building that relationship?
Yeah, so we are very intentional about each one of our FAST families. Our FAST families receive intentional support. We do a FAST pitch with them where we listen to what they need, their goals and their aspirations, and then Faye Bacard pitches to them 3 ways that we can successfully help them. We give them a fast track, which is usually 1 to 6 months, a medium track, which is 1 year, and a slow track, which is 2 years. They pick which one of those pieces that they would like to have. We put together a plan of action. Upon that plan of action or that commitment plan, we then determine what needs they need for volunteers or support or cheering squad. And then we try to make sure that we match up those volunteers. You'll go through training and opportunities so that we can understand your personality. And then we try to match those individuals up to those individuals that best suit them. So if we know that you're interested in construction, or you have a construction company, or you've been working in construction for years, and our family father or parent is interested in construction, we will match you up to that individual family. Our goal is to have a team, that you're not just working alone, that you're working as a whole team. That includes your tutors for the children or even for the parents if they're going to a secondary education. It includes if there's mental health that's needed, and then also any additional volunteer support that they may need.
And just to add on that, as Patrice mentioned, Patrice and team and all of us are sort of learning more about the FAST participating families, their ambitions and goals, as well as the plans and commitments they're making to reach those goals over time, and how much of a haul, given the conditions that might be in place to start, it might be to get there. That is used to inform, all right, what types of resources and networks and such might be needed to help support this family in getting there, including, do we need one volunteer family? Might we need 2 or 3, right? At the same time, as we're recruiting and identifying volunteers, volunteers go through a multi-step training process starting in September through November of onboarding that's meant to help them situationally be ready to be effective in this context with real-life examples of situations that have come up or are coming up, right? So that's the onboarding phase. Ongoing, come January and beyond, we intend for volunteers to be getting together with other volunteers, to be learning with each other, building relationships with each other, building community with each other in the same way that we intend for FAST participating families to do so as well, right? And FAST participating families to get to know other volunteers. So we're all deepening our networks through the process. That answer your question? Yeah. Yeah. There's one right there, Lisa. Mike's coming right there, so everybody can hear. Yeah.
How do you identify the 15 families?
Patrice.
So first we started with the families that were inside of our community center that was already working with us, that was already engaged in some of our work that we do, or in our preschool or in our F.A.S.T center. We were able to achieve 7 of those individuals from there. The other sets came from our work out in the field with our F.A.S.T team that were going out to the apartment complexes within the area. We still are looking for about 4 additional families that we are now going out and asking our faith-based institutions and other partners that if you see families that match the criteria, to please send them our way. We are looking for as many as possible because we do a very strenuous type of evaluation and conversation with them to determine if they fit the FAST program.
And we've learned that families, once they learn about the program and get past a couple of the barriers, some of which Patrice was talking about, they're clamoring to participate. And we think, too, if families are seeing, and we're in a tight geography to start, in the 46260 zip code, right, in the western side of Washington Township, if some FAST families or potential FAST families aren't ready to commit but might be, they might see neighbors of theirs that are part of the program and some of the changes and opportunities that are coming their neighbors' way, and we might see kind of a virtuous cycle start to come through that.
Do you contact the Washington Township School Foundation to get names of families in need? Are you good for this?
We are actively working with the Washington Township school system and their outreach office, their social working office, their school counseling office, that then has helped us get even closer and closer relationships with principals and school social workers and so on and so forth. And they are in the process of identifying families that might be a fit. They've been a willing and active partner. There's a question right here.
We belong or we're connected with a pretty wealthy congregation. I just wonder, are these folks going to become intimidated by, I don't know why, but is there some barrier that we should try to break down to make these people realize that we really are concerned about them? And, well, you understand where I'm going with this.
Yes, yes.
I mean, we're 98%, I don't know what we are, Chris, but we're mainly whites, and some of these folks are not white, and there are barriers in our society, as we all well know.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to try to break this down? And they need to break things down too, I suppose. It's a two-way street.
Yeah. So I would say,
question.
as a woman of color, we have to leap, and we have to jump, and we have to do. And so one of the things that we provide is when we do our volunteer training, it will provide you a skill and opportunities and access to kind of open yourself to feel comfortable with working with people of color, with people with lower income levels, to help build those relationships. As Amar said earlier, relationships is key for success for individuals. So our goal is to help build those relationships, because once you get to know an individual, it doesn't matter who we are. It's all about that individual, and then you can bring them into the fold, right? And then they're more comfortable to come. But having a friend and a relationship to help them walk in the door is priceless. So our goal with this work is really looking at our cheering squad and our volunteers to help build those relationships and give them access that they're not typically used to seeing on both ends, right? You may come over and eat some great greens or something,
That's
you know?
right. That's right.
We need a lot of tutoring.
Yeah.
Yep, there is 16 hours,
Guys get in.
Yeah.
16 hours of volunteer training, I believe,
In
that you
excess
will
of,
go
yeah.
through that will help you with the tutoring and the support to make you comfortable with being able to connect.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the underlying premise being able to build strong, trusting, co-equal relationships across lines of difference.
Yep.
Right. And boy, who wouldn't want to do that or get better at doing that, right? And so that's what the training program is designed to do. But if we enter in, any among us enter into that type of relationship with a view that the role of the volunteer is to make the FAST family or FAST family member like me, right? Or like volunteer, that is not a strong starting place to build a foundational relationship of trust, of mutuality, mutual regard, and co-equality in the eyes of God, right? Yeah. I think there's a question over here.
As this program succeeds, which we all have great faith it will we be sharing best practices with other organizations throughout our state and city, community, wherever, who are also trying to help our neighbors with challenges?
Yes. Very reluctantly, but yes.
Yeah. I think
I would love to share any of our practices. Being out on the northwest side of town, we have to be very innovative about the services because, one, we do not receive a lot of funds from the inner city belt, right? They fund the inner city. They don't really fund a lot of our programming out here, so we have to be very innovative. So most of our programs are a lot different than what you will see inside the inner city. So two, when we do our programming, we're doing something that's outside of the norm of systemic processes because we're thinking about the family. I'm thinking from my perspective of where I came from. I'm thinking about my staff, of where they came from, and how did we feel when we were in the midst of those processes or in the midst of that poverty line, right? And we want to try to eliminate, not address, eliminate. And so some of our practices are just not common in the common work that should be. So we need to make sure that when we give it over, it is clear, it is understandable, and the systemic pieces of it is eliminated so they can really get to the work. Yeah. What we don't want is just to go through and do the surface level work and we still are at the same point.
Yeah. And I just add, while we're, while we're bullish that we'll see success with these up to 15 families, and certainly if this woman has anything to do with it, I think we're going to be pretty darn successful. We also need to be humble in that we're very early on here, right? And so, the notion of disseminating best practices before we've really even started, we might want to be a little careful about. But we hope we'll have something meaningful to share, and certainly would be eager, if not willing, to do so if we have cause for that. Yeah, maybe one more question.
Is there a homeless crisis at all in Washington Township?
Yes.
So that's another dimension.
Yeah, there's a homeless crisis, and then there's just a crisis of housing, period. Because our eviction rate, we're number 2 in the city, actually number 1 in the city, number 2 in the nation of evictions right now. Yeah.
One thing I'd note there, and I think it's an important point, and we want to make sure we don't kind of gloss over that. I'm just going to very quickly go back here. I think it's an important point. We're focusing on, to start with the FAST program, ALICE families, asset limited, income constrained, and employed. Put another way, it's folks that are at roughly the 150 to 175% of the poverty level, right? So not at the most extreme forms or manifestations of poverty, including in 46260 in Washington Township yet. There's a great deal of effort, rightfully so, addressing governmental, NGO, interpersonal, addressing many of these sort of other kind of layers that you see here, rightfully so. The FAST program to start is focused on ALICE families, the idea being ALICE families' rates of economic mobility are extremely low. The likelihood to escape this level is among the lowest that we find amongst all of these folks, right? And part of what Patrice and all of us are trying to do here is create a catalyst to sustainably escape poverty and create some lift and a mechanism for those that are a little further below in terms of poverty, have a mechanism to get up to that level and then sustain out. Intentionally so, to start.
Actually trying to jump over the benefits cliff, if you know what that is, right? Once they
That's right.
get a certain level, all the other additional subsidies disappear, and they can go easily down. Well, we're trying to jump over that. So jumping over our benefits cliff.
Okay.
A quick question. How far outside Washington Township are you reaching? I mean, for the FAST program? For
the FAST program, we are not reaching outside of Washington Township to start. We are within Washington Township and not the entirety of Washington Township to start. The 46260 zip code to start, and actually that neighborhood that we talked about at sort of the top of today's presentation to start. Now, to the question over here, if we see success, and this is something we'll need to talk more about with these families, of course we'd want to think more broadly, but we're not quite there yet. And our thinking is to sort of spread out wide and stretch everyone's efforts thin would be to make it more likely that we don't see success to start and create a model that might be able to be replicated beyond.
And we do
I don't know
service-
if that's a satisfying answer, but
Yeah.
that's how we thought about it.
Well, we do service everyone from the
That's
northwest
right.
side, and
Yeah.
even Fishers, Noblesville, and Carmel, if they
Yeah.
need services for us.
I thought I saw something about Pike Township, but was I reading something else?
No, our service area is Pike and Washington Township. We're right at the cuffs of both boundaries. We go from 38th Street past 96th Street to the north. We go all the way up to 465 or 65 to the west on High School Road. And then we go all the way over to Keystone to the east. So we have the majority of all of north side of Indianapolis. And Pike and Washington Township, we service both.
All right.
I think you're getting that.
We're deeply grateful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, let's thank them. Yeah. Thank you for being here. Patrice, Amar, thank you. We've learned and been inspired, and I think you will find this a receptive and eager to participate group of folks. You're both willing to hang around for just a couple of moments afterwards and have conversations. There are sign-ins, yes, sign-ins on your tables. One of the things that's really important for us is that there be a variety of ways to engage in this work. And so you've seen on some of the slides some kind of put your toe in the water opportunities and some deep dive opportunities. Those will remain open to you as this program begins to take shape. So this is not a sign up by September of 2023 or the ship has sailed. We want to continue to build within the congregation support for the FAST program and support for the work that I think is beginning this evening. So a quick story, and I've told this story several times when he's not in the room. I think this is the first time I've ever told it with him in the room, so I'm not going to look. But I was told when I was in seminary that prophets are not fortune tellers, that prophets don't predict the future. They radically redescribe the present through the eyes of faith. The second week that I was in Indianapolis, because Bill Enright made the connection, I was able to sit down with David Shane. And David said to me, "You will find that Second Presbyterian Church's best days are when the church cares more about the city than itself." And it made me think about the prophet Isaiah, who says, "If you satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light will shine in the darkness." There's an if-then-ness to this work. If we do our part, the promise is God will take care of the rest. If the church cares more about the city than it does about itself, God will take care of both us and our neighbors. We have to do our part. And so I hope that this evening is really the beginning, as Amar said, a catalyst, a starting place. I hope that we can mark this date on our calendars 2 years from now, 5 years from now, when, Lynn, we're sharing our best practices far and wide with the success of the program. We undertake this humbly and with a lot of respect for people who are on the front lines of this work, both in our own community and also in those places we're learning from within our own state, but really around the country as well. So we're trying to learn, we're trying to grow, we're trying to do this better and better as we go forward. I think Amar's point about starting small but thinking big, success breeds success, and as we build on this first cohort of families, I think that success will not only attract more families to the FAST program, but also more volunteer support. So thank you again for being here. Know that your church is behind this effort in every way we can be, and we're being led by some of the brightest minds and most compassionate hearts out there. So thank you for being here, and go in peace.